morning, RosterWatch Nation. Your friendly neighborhood trash man. Here to talk more football. The rumor mill has been grinding away over the last 24 hours. Let's see what the scuttlebutt has been. Shedeur Sanders is being hosted by the Raiders for a pre-draft visit. This is shortly after the Raiders signed Geno Smith to a 2-year contract worth up to $85.5 million. Are they just doing their due diligence on Sanders? It seems like you pay a guy like Geno that much money to come in for 2 years. That's going to be your guy. But maybe they don't see Sanders as a quarterback who can come in and play right away. Maybe they see Geno as a stopgap, a 2-year stopgap. One for sure, and then just another for good measure. While Sanders gets up to speed in the NFL. I actually don't hate Sanders to Vegas. It's a low pressure situation. It's one of the lower pressure situations in football. Kind of why I wouldn't, hate it if he went to Cleveland either. Low pressure situation. You don't have to win there right away. I mean, you might not have to win there at all. It's the same with Vegas. But I think Sanders would have a better team. At least a better offense in Vegas. Team, maybe not so much. The Cleveland's defense is better than the Raiders, for sure. But Sanders would have a better offense to work with in Vegas. Yeah, I could actually see him there. But you wouldn't see him this year. Because the job is Geno Smith. I mean, I guess Sanders can come in and compete with Smith, and you could, let the best man win, but that's probably going to be Smith. He's a good quarterback. And Sanders is still learning the game. And if you could afford to bring along your young quarterback slowly, then you should do it. Only by necessity should you throw him in the fire day one. So it'd be a little bit annoying for Geno Smith's owners, just with the specter of Sanders looming all season. But I don't know how many people are going to own Geno Smith in fantasy outside of best ball leagues and 2 quarterback leagues. Cowboys are to host Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden for a pre-draft visit. Now, this is a pre-visit from a wide receiver rookie that I can get on board with. Golden, I could see filling in that number 2 wide receiver spot for the Cowboys. Golden so far has had meetings with the Bucks and the Steelers in addition to the Cowboys. It would make sense for him to go visit the Packers. Golden's only 21 years old, young. to enter the league. Started his career in Houston, transferring to Texas, where he had 58 receptions for 987 yards and 9 touchdowns last season. It's pretty impressive for a Longhorn receiver, considering just how much they spread the ball out. Ran a 4.29 40. Speedster. Could do damage as a Cowboy. I'd love to see it. But like I said, he's visited with a lot of teams this far into the pre-draft process, so, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. But I could see him making sense for the Cowboys. Though I think, they might have more pressing needs. Related to the Cowboys, this is interesting. And maybe it's finally starting to show cracks in the veneer of Jerry Jones' facade. Maybe he's starting to loosen the grips of loosening the icy grips of his clutches of the Cowboys, on the Cowboys. Marcus Overshone is getting his number 0 jersey, something that the Cowboys said they were not going to do initially. Maybe this is the first sign of Jerry releasing his grip. Maybe the Cowboys are going to start making decisions not based on Jerry's whims. Seems unlikely, but it could happen. Maybe it's the first sign. I hope it is. Because everything up until now that they've done in free agency has not indicated that Jerry is releasing his grip. The moves that they've made. Underwhelming. An attempt to bring drama. Signature Jerry. But I just thought that was a little bit of interesting information, just, that might tell you more than it seems. It's just a jersey. But it could be an indicator of the tide turning in Dallas. One can only hope. Or not hope, if you're not a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. More quarterback visits. Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart is visiting the Browns and Raiders this week. There just isn't really a better football name for a quarterback, really, is there? Jackson Dart. Like if you were creating an NFL or even college, high school based TV program, and you had your quarterback, what would his name be? Probably be something like Jackson Dart. It's a great name for a quarterback. Maybe he was born into it. Anyway, arguably the number 3 quarterback in this draft, behind Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. He's making his visits to the Raiders as well, and the Browns. He's also spent considerable time with the Giants, Saints, and Rams. I wouldn't hate it if the Browns took him. I could see him being a good fit there. And if they were able to take him later somehow, if they did end up taking Travis Hunter with their first pick, then Dart with their second, That I could get behind. Then I wouldn't be so resigned to Hunter's fate as a Brown. Dart to Hunter, that's a combination that could work for a long time. Seems unlikely that'll be around for the Browns' second pick, but it could happen. 22, will be 22 when the season starts. Still young for a quarterback, rookie. It's likely he'll be the third quarterback off the board in the draft. Just no telling really where he's going to go. Packers hosting more Longhorn receivers. This time, Isaiah Bond. In addition to Stanford receiver Alec Ayomanar. I'm sure one of those is right for visits. The Packers seem likely to take a receiver in this draft. That sounds crazy considering how many receivers they have in their room right now, the receiver room, how many viable receivers. But they're looking for that number one. They're looking for that alpha. I don't know if that's Bond. He's shorter, on the smaller side. Shifty little guy. Ayomanar is more of a big body target. You think they'd be looking more to that in the draft. They have plenty of guys who are, a little bit undersized who can get open underneath. They actually have some bigger guys too. They just don't have anybody that takes over the game. And it's doubtful to me that Bond is that kind of play. It will be that kind of player for the Packers if he lands there. I feel like there's too much parity there with those other wide receivers that they already have. Browns hosted Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe as well, and Louisville quarterback Tyler Shaw for visits on Tuesday. In addition to Dart, just bringing everybody in. I mean, there are knocks against all of them. Milroe is more of a work in progress. Shaw turns 26 this season. More developed than Milroe as a quarterback, but he's older. 26 is old for a rookie of any ilk. But the Browns just need to find somebody who'll work in that system, for that system. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports James Cook will play for the Bills in 2025. He acknowledged that things are not great between Cook and the Bills after GM Brandon Beane said in late March that he didn't foresee the two sides getting something done anytime soon on a contract extension for Cook, who's entering his fourth NFL season. Cook only has back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, 18 touchdowns in 2024. I mean, outside of Josh Allen on that offense, who are your killers? Who are your tried and true weapons that you can rely on every week? I mean, if that's not Cook, and I know who is. I know he's a running back. And people don't want to pay for running backs right now, but Cook is more than a running back for the Bills. He's arguably their best pass catcher at this point. You know, in a social media post, Cook requested $15 million per year, which I have to say is a lot for a running back. Could reportedly put up his Buffalo home for sale after Bain's comments. I mean, I might put my home in Buffalo up for sale regardless of my GM's comments. I mean, it's beautiful up in that part of the state, but it's frigid. Actually, my family did live in Buffalo for a year. This is before I was born. My older sister was born in Buffalo. And they were there for exactly 1 year before they moved down to Texas, back down to Texas. Yeah, so I wouldn't blame Cook if he wanted to get out of there. Anyway, even if they paid him. Biting cold in the winters there. You know, wings can only get you so far. You know, but this puts Ray Davis into a good position. You know, get him some more reps in the offseason while Cook holds out potentially. I know a lot of people that would love to see Davis in a starting role for the Bills. Maybe that's another reason why they're not paying Cook right away. They believe that the formula will still work with Davis around. But you can't blame Cook for wanting to get paid. Running backs don't have a long shelf life in the NFL. So I get it. The Athletics' Daniel Popper believes protection in 2024. Vidal played a season-high 35 offensive snaps against the Tampa Bay Bucks in Week 15. Gave up 4 pressures. His head was swimming trying to process Coach Todd Bowles' blitz packages. When Vidal was in position, he did not have the physicality to handle the Tampa linebackers. You know, it's not good. Doesn't bode well for Vidal's chances of being the third down back for the Chargers behind Najee Harris. If you can't pass protect, then what good are you on third downs? So maybe the Chargers bring in another running back. This is the year to do it if you're going to do it. This is the draft to do it in if you're going to do it. I mean, I've never been in love with Vidal as a prospect. So it wouldn't hurt me to see them bring somebody else in. The chances are whoever they bring is going to be playing behind Najee Harris. At least for a good portion of the season. The first half of it, at least. We've seen what happens when you bring in a decent third down back, pass catching back, to compete with Harris as Jaylen Warren has for the past seasons with the Steelers. A lot of nothing. I mean, it doesn't really help anybody's chances for fantasy production in that offense. Najee Harris, one of the more he's like a Ramondre Stevenson for me. He's pretty underwhelming for the most part. Plays well enough to keep his job, but he's not really going to excel as a running back in the NFL. But he'll hold the line while the receivers do their work. Although this is a run-first offense, right? That's what Harbaugh said. Started to change that throughout the season last year. So it wasn't really working out for him. Najee Harris, I think his best years are behind him. So yeah, it makes sense for the Chargers to bring somebody else in. Chargers say, though, that wide receiver is absolutely a priority. The Athletic's Daniel Popper thinks that the Chargers could take a receiver as high as 22nd overall, and believes Arizona wideout Tet McMillan is a fit because of his size and contested catch ability. I mean, I see that. Ladd McConkey's their go-to guy right now. Smaller underneath receiver. PPR asset. Then you got Quentin Johnston, who we've got production, in fits and starts. Butterfingers. A guy that I wanted to succeed in the NFL. But has been streaky at best. And then Mike Williams, bringing him back, retread. They need some more life in that receiving core, in that receiving room. They need somebody beside Ladd McConkey to do the work. McMillan would be a good fit. If you think McMillan is a good fit for any team in the NFL. Alex and Cody are out on him. We saw a clip that he doesn't really watch tape. Maybe he doesn't feel like he needs to. That could be the death knell for a young wide receiver in the NFL. A guy who thinks his abilities transcend him having to do things like watch tape. If that is the case for McMillan, buyer beware. Maybe it works out every once in a while, but it's not gonna. It's not a recipe for success. I'll say that. But I could see him fitting in there with the Chargers. The Athletic's Dan Duggins believes that Russell Wilson's $2 million base salary makes him eminently tradable if things don't go well for the Giants in 2025. And that makes sense. They're going to bring in another quarterback anyway in the draft, through the draft, most likely. There's a good chance it's Shedeur Sanders. I mean, and they had Jameis Winston as well. Things don't work out with Russ. Things don't work out with Russ this season. They'll bring Jameis Winston in. And I wouldn't hate it. Actually, I would prefer it for fantasy football. I would prefer Jameis Winston to be the starting quarterback for the Giants over Russell Wilson. May not be better for the team overall, but I think it's better for fantasy. Winston is just one of those guys who slings the ball around. He'll go deep, take chances, and he'll hit some of the time. Throw up enough shots, one is bound to get in. Jameis Winston is that kind of guy, and that's why we love him. We love him for a few reasons. He's a good guy. It's hard not to like him. But yeah, better for fantasy than Russell Wilson for me. Titans GM Mike Borgonzi said wide receiver position we're going to have to attack through the draft and waiver claims. Right now, the Titans depth chart, behind Calvin Ridley, they have Treylon Burks, Van Jefferson, James Prochet II, Bryce Oliver, and Mason Kinsey. Might be the most underwhelming receiving core in the league. You know, I guess it rivals Cleveland rivals. But I don't know that there's a more pitiful looking receiver core than the one I just listed. I mean, behind Ridley, the best player available there behind Ridley is arguable. I mean, it's Van Jefferson. He's proven himself more than Treylon Burks at this point. And Van Jefferson is a role player at best. James Prochet, I mean, you know, we liked him in the pre-draft process, but he hasn't proven himself in the NFL at all. Then Bryce Oliver and Mason Kinsey, you know, what can you say? Kyle Williams would be a good fit there. Ted McMillan would be a good fit there. Matthew Golden would be a good fit there. There'd be a lot of, actually, really any of these wide receivers who are in the upper echelons of this year's draft class would be a better fit than most of those wide receivers in Tennessee. The future's wide open there. I mean, I will say that. The receiving core sucks, but whoever they bring in is going to have a clear path to fantasy relevance. And you're going to have a clear path to fantasy relevance. If you stick with us throughout the offseason into the NFL season, hopefully you have. Hopefully you've been doing that. And hopefully you continue to. Stay tuned for Alex and Cody as they banter back and forth, molding the theoretical clay into a beautiful statue of fantasy brilliance. Stick around for that a few hours. Anyway, this has been the Trash Man on behalf of RosterWatch.com. Until next time, be ready.